Good afternoon, everybody. It's Lee Cassidy from Tactile Technology, and it's one of my regular In the Hot Seat sessions. We do these on a Thursday with the Goldman Sachs alumni, so you'll be seeing those regularly. We have quite a lot of them, but we also do Tuesdays, and we've not had too many recently because a lot of people have been quite busy with other things. But we've got Julia Skan with us today, so I'll just bring in Julia. How are you, Julia?
Hello, I'm really well, thanks, Lee. How are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. So tell us a little bit about your background, where you started, where you grew up, your parents, school life and things. So we've got a bit of a foundation to understand, where you came from.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Julia, and I grew up in Solihull, so in Birmingham. Went to school. I really loved school, really enjoyed it, and I actually the only thing I could do at school was languages, of all things. So I was okay at most things, but languages was my real thing. So I ended up going to university, did French and Italian.
I
And
was in Yorkshire, so it took a while to get the English language. It was more the Yorkshire language to start with, but I think I've mastered it now.
yeah, I can hear you, so that I can understand you, so that's all right. That's good.
Good. So tell us a bit about that languages piece then. Were there any particular languages that you focused on?
French and Italian. So I did French at A-level and did a lot of literature. And when I was looking at going to university, I didn't want to be stuck in books all the time. I was more interested in the living language. And you'll notice that speaking Italian, I use my hands a lot. So I was more interested in the living language. So I managed to literally translate my degree into French and Italian at University of Kent, and lived in Paris and lived in Italy for a year as well.
So that's good to actually, experience not just the language, but the lifestyle as well.
That was really, really important. So I was able to swan around these European cities working and studying hard.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a lot of effort put into that.
It was huge, yeah. A lot of eating and drinking to obviously understand about the food and the wine as well.
Yeah, definitely. So, what were your plans going forward? What did you have any particular area that you wanted to go into? You want to be a train driver or, a pilot or anything? Or did you have a plan before you went to university?
Well, in those days, quite a few years ago now, Lee. So in those days, it wasn't really that important to have a plan. It was the late 80s, and that was the boom years when everybody was apparently really, really successful. So I wasn't too worried. I just knew I was following my passion, which was doing my languages and also being able to be. I've always been a people person. So my plan was to, I guess, I'm no disrespect to anyone in the UK, but there's not that many English people who speak more than one language. So
very true.
Yeah, so I went to London, and my goal was really to like help businesses develop with the cultural and the language skills that I had. So yeah, I did that for 20 years.
So that was the first role then. So it was working in corporate, mainly around that language side of things. Tell us a little bit about what you did there.
In the corporate world, I started. I went to work for a really small company which published business magazines. And my job was obviously to bring in advertising from French companies and Italian companies. What was really great was I had the opportunity to travel all over the world with face-to-face contact with customers. So I was in a frontline sales role. At the age of 23, I was flying to Japan and Egypt and America to attend conferences and exhibitions and meet our potential customers face-to-face. So
any particular, like verticals these magazines were focused at that you were working on?
The textile industry, so the worldwide textile industry, and just technology at the time. So we attended at the conferences like CeBIT in Germany, and obviously the plastics industry was massive.
I've been to CeBIT, Hanover, many times.
I went to CeBIT, and there was a big plastics exhibition I went to as well. Yeah.
So during that time, you also had a hobby, which was sailing, I believe,
yeah,
which was a big thing. So tell us a little bit about that.
How long have you got? Because that's my real passion, and that's
we have a little bit of time.
A little bit of time. Okay, so as soon as I graduated, I went backpacking. I went around the world with a girlfriend, and we got to Sydney, and we were drinking in bars. And bear with me on this story because there is an end to it. But we were drinking in bars, and I said to my friend, I'm a bit of an adventurer. So I said, we're sitting here drinking, doing the things we would normally be doing at home, but on the other side of the world. And she said, yeah. And I said, we don't, that's not right. We could also be having more adventures that we wouldn't otherwise do at home. So she said, what did you have in mind? I said, well, let's use every form of transport we can. Let's try and get ourselves on a yacht. And she said, but I get really seasick. So I was like, you'll be fine. She wasn't fine at all. But we got onto this boat, and we sailed 500 miles from Sydney to Brisbane. We had 2 storms, and it was just something I just fell in love with it. It just resonated. It just made me feel alive. So I came back to the UK when we'd finished our traveling. There is a big story which I only talk about over a glass of champagne because it was quite funny, and it's quite long, so I'll spare you the details. But to cut a long story short, I came back to the UK and said that's what I want to do. So I started doing the courses in Southampton and learned how to sail properly. Then I met my husband. He was a big sailor, and we bought a 33-foot yacht which we kept down on the Solent.
That's quite a sizable yacht as well. Because I used to sail, but I was like Enterprise 14s, so slightly smaller. In fact, a lot smaller. And also Marauders, if you remember Marauders, which was a Mirror 14 racing dinghy with a full spinnaker. So, but that's a long time ago. I don't think I'd get into a boat nowadays. So, but I enjoyed it at the time. So, how did that progress then? All that sailing?
Well, it turned into a bit of a passion, really. So we had a crew of, there were 7 of us all together, and it was largely family and a few friends. But we got into sailing every weekend. So that was national championships, winter series, spring series, round the island, Cork Week, Cows Week. And after about 7 years of sailing literally every weekend, apart from the winter months, so three seasons of the year, we'd be sailing down on the Solent. And then it got to a point where my husband and I said, right, we need more because we're really loving it. We need a bit more. So we had this idea to, in the winter, we read books about sailing, and we picked up these books about going across the Atlantic and going further afield. And all the books said, if you're thinking about doing it, put the book down and go and do it. So we did. So we just looked at each other and went, we're going. So
I bet the experience is slightly different to the books, though.
It was better, actually. It was better.
Yeah. So I would have thought time of year makes a big difference as well with an Atlantic crossing, doesn't it? So when did you actually go?
We went in November, so November the 23rd. In fact, this week, isn't it? Today in 2003, we set off.
Very appropriate, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't realise. I just looked at the day. So we sailed. We left England in the June. Sailed down to across Biscay, Bay of Biscay, which was very rough. Then Spain, Portugal, across the Canaries, and we left the Canaries today. It was the day after, if you remember, the World Cup when Johnny Wilkinson kicked that final kick, and we won the World Cup.
I remember that very well.
Yeah.
Did you go via Ascension then? Did you?
No, you don't. We went north of the Cape Verdes, so we didn't stop at Cape Verdes. It wasn't the plan. We went straight across, but we kind of saw them on the horizon, and then and across past Barbados. So we hit St. Lucia on December the 13th. So it took 3 weeks.
Did you stay over there long? Did you come straight back over again afterwards?
6 months. We stayed there 6 months. Once you're there, it's actually much harder to sail back because it's a very easy sail going across the Atlantic. And when people say, "Oh, you're a really good sailor, you've been across the Atlantic," no, it's really easy. What you do is you put the sails up, the wind is behind you the whole time, so you just sit there for 3 weeks and you just make sure everybody's fed and watered and sleeps well. And it's really easy. The hard stuff is places like the Solent, where you've got shipping lanes and navigational hazards and really strong tides. With the Atlantic, it's really, really easy. So I'm now back.
It's a bit more of a challenge getting back, isn't it?
Much more. Sorry, yes, much more of a challenge going back.
I
Yeah,
would have thought sailing, especially with a crew, it's very good at team building, and and that, getting
very.
people working together, leadership. So that really leads into a little bit what you're doing now. So you've had a change of career a few years ago, haven't you? And you're now doing more in that. You've got some work around executive search, but you also do like goal setting and helping people with personal development. So tell us a little bit about that space.
Okay, so I'm involved in executive research because I really enjoy the global business side of things still, and so it's still ingrained, and I do still get the opportunity to use my languages, which is really important to me, and connect with people in different countries. I really enjoy that. Yeah, as I said, I've always been people focused, and yes, to go back to your point about teamwork and leadership, the Atlantic was a massive person management exercise, because with all sorts of things, we didn't have fresh water to wash in. It was keeping morale up. The middle week we didn't have any wind, so we were going very slowly, and people wanted to just get there so they could experience the Caribbean lifestyle. All kinds of challenges. One guy was missing his son and decided to not do his watches for a couple of days. So I stepped in and I did his watches, but then I got tired. So there were all sorts of things, a few mechanical issues we had. So yeah, so there was a lot to deal with. But it was, you can imagine, it was a massive project to take on, and a huge sense of achievement when we got there. It's just absolutely incredible, really was. So from there, during 2019, I decided that executive research was great and I was enjoying it. It wasn't challenging me enough. It wasn't really not my real passion. So during lockdown, I had actually experienced the course. So what I teach now, the way I coach people, I'd experienced the courses myself beforehand. And I was using them in my daily life, really. I was kind of self-coaching, if you like, while I was an executive researcher full time. And then when lockdown hit, I work at home and I live on my own. And I was thinking, gosh, I've got all this time. I'm not very good at watching TV, to be honest. I'm not much of a couch loafer. So it was quite tough being on my own here, not as challenged as I would like to be. So what was great was these two particular coaching courses that I've been through myself. An opportunity came up to learn how to teach them myself online and from home during lockdown. So that's what I've been doing. I've been going through the Train the Trainer series to qualify and certify to be able to deliver the programs myself.
Is it mainly over virtual, things like Zoom and Teams at the moment, or are you doing face-to-face type activity as well?
At the moment, it's on Zoom. That the Train the Trainer was on Zoom, and now I'm coaching people on Zoom. It's just easy that way. It can now be done, thanks to the easing, it can be done face-to-face. But at the moment, it's on Zoom. It just depends on the person and the situation and the distance, of course. But it's just.
What type of individuals are you working with at the moment?
I'm working with, let's see. So I'm So I work with two programs. One is goal mapping, and that is really for everybody. It helps people get clarity and visualization and a real feeling of success with their future. So in actual fact, I'm running a workshop this evening, and it's for everybody. I think I've got about 20 people coming online, and it's obviously going to be quite a generic, it won't be so personalized, but we're really going to get people feeling and looking forward and visualizing what success looks like for them.
If anybody's interested, we've got the URL to that goal mapping piece at the bottom. So if anybody wants to take that and join the session this evening, I'm sure they'll be more than welcome, won't they, Julia?
Very welcome indeed. And then the other program is Light Up, which is more for the best way to describe Light Up is if life is like a windscreen, we're driving along, aren't we? And we've got a windscreen. Then obviously the dead flies get stuck on the windscreen, and the mud and the rain and everything that comes off the road gets stuck to the windscreen. Well, with Light Up, it's like a windscreen wiper, and we clear off that windscreen for people, so they've got a lot more clarity, they're much more in touch with themselves, and they're able to make clearer, better decisions.
Okay, and what type of business people are you encouraging to look at Light Up? Is there a particular area? People like entrepreneurial, people in management roles, anything particular?
People in teams. So we recently took 2 creative agencies as a team through Light Up, and there is actually a video on YouTube. They found it amazing to be able to, it's changed the way they work together and engage together, and they're seeing really good success from it. So yeah.
Well, I have a background with leadership, and I'm ex-military, so we see the value in that team building exercises, working together, and that leadership type piece as well. Rachel's in the background. No one else can see Rachel other than you and I, but Rachel and I, we regularly talk about briefings, and one of the things that we do in the military, we use a thing where we go through the situation, the mission, the execution, how we're going to achieve it. So this SMEAC, as we call it, and it's also checking understanding and asking questions. So it's just making sure that everybody knows what we got, where we are, what we're trying to do, how we're going to go about it, and then making sure they've answered any questions and we've checked that they understood what we did in the briefing. So it's quite interesting that we go through that kind of stuff anyway. And leadership comes naturally in the military, because you go through particular phases of getting people a part of a team, working together in different ways. So a lot of people outside of that don't get that experience, though, and leadership just tends to be somebody's told me to do something, rather than feeling a part of a team. And I think being a part of the team and feeling connected is quite an important thing. So I'm sure that's a part of what you're doing with these programs, is it?
Very much so, yes. And it's also we did say on one session recently that people feel more connected to each other when they've been through an experience together. Do you agree with that, Lee?
Yeah, shared experiences make a big difference, and you do feel like you're connected more through that shared experience, whatever that might be. You know, even cooking together, making cocktails together, or fighting a battle together. It's the same working. It's a shared experience, and when it works really well together, and you feel a part of that tighter team, don't you, because of it?
Exactly. And I'm sure you find that with your Goldman Sachs alumni group as well, is that even if it's a yoga
very
retreat,
similar, yeah,
all
go through the same experience. And when we do the interviews, the hot seat on a Thursday, everybody tends to say the same things, because even though they're a very different business to the previous week, the experience and what they've gained from it is very similar each time as well.
Interesting. So that's what we do with goal mapping in particular. Well, I Light Up as well, is if we can get the whole team around the table and getting them to create a vision that they're all involved with, and then come out with this visual map of where the team is going and what would be a really great win for them and what would be fabulous success, then they all sign it. I can show you a slide, actually. I don't have it here, but there's a slide. Microsoft went through goal mapping together and they all signed it. So they've got this shared vision that they'd all created together. It was on the wall of the office and helped them get to where they wanted to get to.
It's that shared experience, isn't it, and things. So it does make a big difference. But I think also, when you think of a business, as a leader, you need to have 2 real things. One is you need to understand what your mission is. What am I trying to do as an individual and my business? What am I trying to do with it? But also you need to have that vision that you can then share with your team, so all of the team understands where you're going and what you're trying to achieve. You know, it's taking people on a journey, isn't it? We might be taking it on a business journey, but actually understanding where you are, where you're going, and why, and how you're going to achieve it. Coming back to my SMEAC sounds like again, but I think it's really important that people understand what the journey is about, you know, and that vision of it, and be able to visualize it and be there together. Coming back to the Goldman Sachs piece, there's a common thread that people talk about, which is being on the bus. So the idea is one vision. We're traveling together. We're all looking in the same direction. We understand what we're trying to do, and it's being on the bus all together. Because in a business, sometimes if people don't really understand what the vision is for the business and the mission, they could be going in a different direction. And they're actually pulling the business away from where they want to go. And it's really important that people understand, this is what we're trying to achieve, and this is where we're going about it, so that people can actually be all on the same journey and work together in it. It's like on a tandem, isn't it? So instead of a tandem, we've got a 20 or 50 or 2,000 seat bike, and everybody's steering and pedaling together. We're going to get there much quicker than if we're trying to steer different directions, and some people are pedaling and some people aren't, or some people might put the brakes on. Never know. So, so those kind of things are quite important in it. So what's the future look like then? Is this goal mapping and this lighting people's lives up and putting the windscreen wipers on? Is that the future, or have you got other ideas and directions to go yet?
I never say never, Lee. I'm one of these people who have a very positive attitude, and I've always got a learning attitude. So if something comes across my way and grabs my attention, then absolutely, I'll look into it. And I always think I'll try something once or twice just to see what it's like. So, but I think as well, going back to the bus, we have something called the bicycle of ability, and with goal mapping, so imagine a bicycle is your we call it the bicycle of ability. So imagine you're riding a bicycle along, and you've got your wheel is your technical knowledge and skills, and the other wheel is the ability to get on with people. So it depends, as you say, it depends on how fast you're pedaling, if you're not pedaling at all, if you're going downhill or uphill or just coasting. What goal mapping does is gives people the drive, attitude, and confidence to be able to withstand the bumps in the road. So I think that's quite handy and quite useful as an individual or as a team. But so for me, going back to your question about the future, I'm really getting into my goal mapping and my light up. So I really, really want to help as many people as I can, just to have. I mean, you'll find that lots of people, if you ask people what their goals are, so that's what I'm doing at the moment. What are your goals for 2022? So many people in this world don't make goals, or they don't even look. They just carry on, getting through day after day after day. But it's like, if you don't know where you're going and you don't have a map, how do you know when you've got there? Yeah. So I'm really getting into that. But the other thing, the side thing, is spending more time sailing actually, and helping more people to get into sailing. So I've got my eye on chartering boats and taking novices out to help them learn, get experience sailing and get more into it, but also volunteering for a children's charity to get children out on the water, and then particularly vulnerable children who wouldn't have the opportunity to do that. So that's
and that. Where are you doing that? Is that local, or is that down at Southampton again?
Yeah, down in Southampton.
Because I'm involved with the youth organisation, the RFA cadets. So I've been doing that for the last 11 years. And we have local sea cadets by us, and they do a lot of work in the area with young people from age around about 12 through till about 20. So again, they go sailing locally. It's mainly dinghies and canoes that they use, but they do a lot of work there. But they also go down to Southampton and a number of other places, especially some of the Royal Navy yards where they've got training boats, and get involved with that as well. So it's really useful. I was speaking to a father of a potential cadet that might be joining us in January earlier today. And then he was telling me a little bit about he'd like to be involved so he can help, follow the journey with his son next year. But there's quite a lot of commitment there to be able to do this, because we have to be very careful about who gets involved from trying to think of the terminology, child safety perspective. So we make sure everybody's DBS and all these other things. So it's a real commitment for a lot of people to do that, but also they're giving up a lot of their time. Because a lot of these activities take a lot of time. Just if we do our normal parades, we've given up around about, I would say about 6 to 8 hours a week just in that. Then on top of that, we've got all the administrative work and all the preparation work and all the things we do. But the big difference is the children themselves, because I was speaking to this father earlier today. His child's got a few issues, and a lot of people bring them to us thinking we're going to fix all the problems that they've got. Problems with focus and many other things. But what we can do is we can make them build confidence. We can help them understand their own capabilities, work in a team effectively, lead a team, and that confidence allows them then to do things like present information. So that could be in a ad hoc environment, so briefing people on a particular activity that's going to happen, but it could also be transferred into something like an interview. So if you've got that level of confidence in yourself, you come across much better in an interview. And it stops this umming and ahhing piece that a lot of people do when they speak, because they're confident and they're thinking about it. They don't have any nerves because they understand, what they're talking about, because it's about themselves and they understand themselves. So I think working in those youth type organizations are really important. I also do quite a lot of mentoring. So I'm doing some work with Be Seen at the moment. I'm also working with an ex-forces a mentoring program as well, where they call us an industry captain. So somebody who's come out of the military and wants to start a business, and we help them understand the differences between being in the military and being in civilian life, and also the aspects of actually building up and running a business, because it's quite different as well. So what are the, what's the most interesting goal that you've heard recently? We don't want to know names or anything. What's the most interesting thing that somebody wants to achieve in, say, 3 or 5 or 10 years' time? I'm sure there's a couple of quite interesting ones, isn't there?
Shall I tell you a funny one? I'll tell you.
Go on then.
I won't tell you the lady's name, obviously. She wanted to do a goal map because she has teenagers at home, and she always felt like when teenagers were coming over to play with her children for the day, and mums and dads were coming to pick up their teenagers, she always felt really uncomfortable that her house wasn't tidy enough.
Oh.
I know. So we did a goal map to help her do 2 things. One was to, and this is just a really funny example. One was to help her create a routine during the week, so things were clean and tidy and in a state that we should be happy to open her front door to visitors. And that was the one. And then the second theme was to let go of the fact that things may be out of place, or and the fact that people who are coming through the front door probably didn't even notice. It was only her that was noticing that that things were as they should be. Because let's face it, when we go to someone's house, we don't look at their dust. We're only worried about our own dust.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting that how people focus on things. My wife's very similar. She focuses on things like she hates leaves, and we've got loads of trees in the garden, so there's masses of leaves, and she hates it, and she'll clear it all up, and then 5 minutes later they're there again because it's still falling off the trees. But I always find it strange when people do video calls as well, and they keep looking at themselves.
I know.
Looking, oh, what's that? And they're focused more on themselves and what they look like on the camera than the conversations they're having with the people, in this virtual room. You've got to just forget about it. It's just. When you're actually face to face with someone, you don't look at it. You don't have a mirror and lift it up and keep looking. What's my face look like? You just talk. It's people get hung up with so easy with little things. It's quite amazing, really. So tell us your key goals then. So give us 3 to 5 goals for your next 3 to 5 years. What are you going to achieve that's really important to you? Because you've got to eat your own dog food, haven't you? Yeah.
So say that again.
You have to eat your own dog food. So if you're saying that people should be working to set goals and things, you should be doing it yourself. So what are your key goals?
Doing it myself, for sure. So one of my goals is I do various goal maps. So one is about confidence, and actually so these don't have to be tangible, I will be earning so many £1,000 by the end of the year. It's that too, but it's also about who am I being in my life. So the one I did this week was for confidence. So the theme of that one is very much to accept that I make mistakes, obviously accept that I am who I am, and it's absolutely okay to be that way, and not try and be someone else, or not try and be someone that other people want me to be. And the third theme of that is to acknowledge my achievements, because I'm that kind of person that goes on. And it's really important for me to reflect and stop and say, okay, let's review the week. What have we achieved? I don't know about you. Do you do that?
I do look at things, as Rachel's attest as well. I plan everything and I measure everything near enough as we go along. But like you say, it is quite important in life to look at what you've achieved, because how can you step forward unless you know where you are at that point in time? And it is difficult, to do that. And a lot of people don't look at themselves too much. They tend to look at everything around them, but they don't look at themselves. And I think you have to be quite critical of yourself to understand what areas you need to improve, but also be positive about the areas that you are good at, and focus. I know I can achieve these things. These are the areas I need to really work on, and have some plans to do that. Because again, it's like anything. If you don't practice and practice and practice, you don't get better. As a runner, a cyclist, a swimmer, whatever you do, to what level, unless you practice whatever it is, you don't get better at it. And it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a physical sport, whether it's something that uses cognitive abilities. I'm into shooting. I coach shooting and I do a lot of shooting. So that again is quite a different thing, because a lot of people think it's a physical thing, but it's more of a mental thing than it is a physical thing. It's ensuring that you're thinking correctly about what you're doing and following a process. And that's more about shooting and the achievement in shooting than it is the physical aspects. Am I big enough to hold the weapon still enough? Those kind of things. It's more about understand the process and getting your head straight about it. And I'll tell you a little story about that, very short one, about difference between boys and girls shooting. Is you get two boys firing together on a range, whether there's two of them or six of them, and they're next to one another. They think that they're competing with one another. In reality, they don't. They're actually competing against themselves, because it doesn't matter if lane one does the best shot in the world. It's not going to affect lane two. He can do exactly the same in lane two as lane one if he follows the process, has the mental attitude and things at the same time. Girls, completely different. They don't care what anybody else is doing. They just get there and they just want to do the best, and they keep focused on getting better and better and better. And they listen, to improve as well in shooting. I don't know why, it's something specific about shooting and girls. They do focus a lot more because they're not concerned what anybody else is doing. I think in everything else they are concerned. Is my makeup right, and all these other things that that are less tangible. But in shooting, they tend to focus on doing the right thing, where boys are the opposite. They think it's all about everyone else. And I always talk about shooting being like golf. You've got this projectile that's a bit bigger in golf, and you're whacking it with a bit of metal and it shoots off in the distance. It doesn't matter what the player ahead of you does or the player behind. It's not going to change how you perform. It's down to you. It's your skills, your focus, and how you actually come to it, the process you follow, that makes a difference. No one else.
Brilliant. Is that targets or clays or? Oh,
it's target shooting. So we do 25, 50, up to 600 meters, but we use air rifles up to 5.5 meter. We do 2 rim fire up to 25 meters, and then the longer ranges we use the military weapons. So you may have seen like an SA-80. So it's the military weapon that's used at the moment. We call it a slightly different name. It's an L85A2 is a military one. We use an L98A2, which means you can't have it in automatic fire. You can only in repetition, so single shots. So that's only difference. But these things are killing machines, and we have to train them really well to make sure they know what they're doing, because we don't want them accidentally firing these things. And the other thing is they carry a long way. So it comes out at the end at 940 meters per second, and it'll carry for 4 miles. So you've got to be careful, because it's going very fast and going a long way. So you've got to make sure that it's pointed in the right direction and under control. So we teach all that procedure, and we test them as well. So we do things called weapon handling tests. So we normally do around about 12 to 14 hours worth of training initially, and then we'll do some tests to make sure they've picked all that up before we actually give them a chance to fire on the range. But then they're always under really controlled environment as well when they shoot on a range. So we have a range officer and people who supervise each firer, and we go through a set process, and it follows the guidelines of safe place, safe people, safe equipment, and a safe practice. So it's all contained. We know exactly what's going to happen because it's followed in that way. So it's interesting. It carries on, because I was in the military for nearly 20 years. So it's nice to have continued that for the last 11 years with the cadets and doing something similar, because I think familiarity is quite good. It makes you feel comfortable when you're doing things that are familiar. So I'm still doing a technology job, but I've got this familiarity with things that I had from the past. So I think it's quite good, to have that connection with it. I think that might be a saving thing, is that familiarity helps as well. Plus, it sounds like you've got passion for it as well.
Yeah, it just makes, I feel like I'm home when I'm sailing. It's weird.
Yeah,
I'm sure you do as well on a range, and I'm sure you feel.
Yeah, that's it. You feel connected to it. Less connected when it's middle of winter and it's snowing, and you're freezing, and there's icicle on the end of your nose, and your tea's going cold in your pot. So it's not quite as pleasant doing it in the middle of winter, but it is quite pleasant. Being outside as well is quite nice as well. Bit of fresh air and everything. I think one thing I really find, like with the cadets, when we bring them through, learning and things with the normal things, but in shooting as well, when we get them there and we talk through, because we do a briefing every time that they fire. So we brief them in advance what they're going to do, how they're going to go about it, what the commands are going to be. They'll do the fire. While we go through it, we watch them and we coach as we go along and talk about what's happening. At the end, we go forward and have a look at this, how they've fired on the target, and we can see from what it looks like what they're doing. So we look at the size of the group. So how wide is it? So the wider it is, the less accurate. The smaller it is, the more accurate. And the shape of it, we look for a pattern, and in that we can actually understand what they're doing. So normally, if it's going up and down, there's some breathing issues because they're laid on their chest when they're firing. We find the prone position, so that breathing will affect it. Now we see movement side to side, and that's normally things like snapping the trigger or not being in the right position. So especially if they're moving from center to one way, it's really they're not aligned properly. So we can see all this thing, and we brief them and debrief them each time. And they get better and better and better. And at the end, they're so grateful because they've done so much better, than where they started. And that's the big difference. And I think it's in coaching, like we're talking about with your career, that coaching really does make a difference. When somebody starts at one point and then after this activity, they're actually further along. They've improved in some respect, and it doesn't matter what it is, but if there's been some improvement, that makes a big difference, and they feel much better in themselves. But as a coach, you feel good in yourself because you've achieved something with them. You've moved them forward from where they were to somewhere else, and I think that's quite important. So we're coming up to the end of our chat. It's nearly 40 minutes, so I'm not sure if you thought it would take, we'd be chatting for this long. Most of my sessions, because I'm a talker as well, are normally 30 to 40 minutes anyway, so it always takes a while to get through it because I'm throwing a few bits of my own in there now and again. But anything you'd like to leave on, any particular things? I know we spoke about the event you're doing tonight, the goal mapping tonight. If anybody wants to join that, Rachel, if you could put the goal mapping link up, and then if anybody wants to join that goal mapping event tonight, have a look at the link, take it down. You won't be able to copy it or click on it because it's a video, but you can write that down, type it into your browser, and go and join that later today. But anything else you like to leave us with?
Not so much really. I guess I wasn't prepared for that question, Lee, but okay. Let me put my answer together. I guess really my passion is my vision really is to help people get unstuck. So it's been a really tough couple of years. I've had my challenges living and working alone at home with just my dog for company. So I fully understand, I guess, so the tools that I'm working with now, I know exactly how they can help people. And what I'm really keen to do is, no matter where people feel like they're stuck in their life now, be it career, relationships, finances, you know, there is help out there. And I'm super keen to help people to not get success maybe, but just move to being in a better place. Yeah. So I'm really keen to talk to people, explain to them how it will work, and do what I can to reach out and help people improve things if that's what they'd like to do. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure having you on and getting people to know a little bit more about you, your past, your present, and your future, and also what you're trying to achieve. If you can stay on afterwards, we'll just shut down the broadcast and we'll just have a quick wash up, make sure talk through what we've discussed. But for everyone else, thank you very much for joining us today. We've got a number of sessions. We don't have a Thursday this week, but we've got plans for Tuesdays and Thursdays after this week. So please join us regularly. Just look on LinkedIn, you'll see them advertised normally about 3 to 5 days before the event. So please join us if you wish. If you've got any questions for Julia or myself, just put a comment on Facebook, because it's on Facebook, YouTube, we've got comments there, and also we're in LinkedIn Live. So if anybody's got any comments, put them on there and we'll all respond to those. So thank you very much for joining us today, and I shall leave everybody in peace. Thank you very much. Bye.